Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
7:37 on WMAL. According to our last caller, I am the gravitas-bearing Brian Wilson, and you are the Renaissance man, Brian Neiman.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us here this morning on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. Standing by on the phone line, Congressman Michael Burgess, a Republican from Texas, a member of the Congressional Health Care Caucus. He is, by the way, also a doctor. On this, the day that the House of Representatives begins debate on another effort to try to repeal Obamacare. Congressman, how are you this morning?
I am well, Brian. And Brian, how are you all?
We're doing very well. Okay, so you've tried to do this before, Republicans have. Is this time a little different, given what the Supreme Court has handed down?
Well, yes, because obviously they were the, if you will, the last backstop that people thought they had against this thing actually being visited upon the country. I'm talking about the Affordable Care Act, of course. Now, there will be a referendum on the law in November, but between now and November, you really do have to educate people about just what is at stake. This is not something that will allow a voter to just have casual knowledge of what is actually occurring in our country right now with the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. We've got a tremendous educational job to do to instruct people just exactly what their lives will look like if this thing is not stopped. So the repeal vote today is, if you will, part of the statement that in order to actually reform any aspect of health care in this country, the first thing you have to do is get rid of the mess that was made by the last Congress and the President.
All right, so this time, as you go down this path of having a debate on repealing Obamacare, it is different in one way in that you now can say to the Democratic members of the House, if you stand behind Obamacare, you are standing behind what is, according to the Supreme Court, a tax increase. Does that change the game at all?
Well, I think it likely will, and I have to believe, Brian, that you would not have had 60 votes in the Senate in December of 2009 had this thing properly been articulated as a tax. At the time, remember, it was a penalty and not a tax, and they were very careful to construct the narrative that this was not a tax. Well, that veneer has been stripped away. The Supreme Court has exposed it for what it is. It is a tax, and if the Senate were to actually take up this same repeal vote that the House is doing, I got to believe some of the people that actually stood behind this thing in December of 2009, who are now facing re-election this year or in the next cycle in 2014, would have a hard time justifying that position.
Do you think you'll get Democrats to vote with you in the House on repealing Obamacare this time around?
You know, it's always a tough call. I'm sure there'll be some, and I've talked to some offline who said, yeah, I think I'm there. The difficult thing is, of course, their minority leader, Nancy Pelosi, I mean, this was a big deal for her. This was the whole reason for her being Speaker at one point was the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and she will hold her troops pretty close to the line. So I guess, in a way, too, this will be a referendum on Nancy Pelosi's leadership in the Democratic minority. How close are people hewing to what she says they must do?
Right. There have been some rumors that there could possibly be a deal to extend the Bush tax cuts for another year for everyone. Now, the president came out yesterday and says he only wants to extend them for those who make under $250,000. And he also told a local television station that he would veto any bill that extended the cuts for those who make over $250,000. Do you hold him at his word that he would veto such a bill, and do you think there is any chance of extending these tax cuts for everyone before the end of the year?
Well, he knows he can. I would love to see him veto that, but he knows good and well that his dear friend Harry Reid will protect him from ever seeing that bill in the Oval Office of the White House, because I rather suspect, and Speaker Boehner has committed, that the House will not wait until the fiscal cliff is imminent in December. He wants us to take up this work now and do it prior to the time of the deadline, and I think he's exactly right.
Okay, does that mean then that taxes will go up for those who make over $250,000 if Harry Reid won't even allow it to get to the president's desk?
Well, no, Harry Reid will not allow it to get to the president's desk. The danger is the taxes go up for everyone at all income levels, because the Bush-Obama tax cuts would expire.
So you expect then, it sounds like to me, that taxes are going to go up on January 1st.
No, I do think there will be a compromise. I just have difficulty with what I've seen the last year and a half. I have difficulty believing the Senate will actually allow a vote on this before Election Day.
Okay,
that's the difficult part.
Okay, so you think after Election Day maybe a deal could be made?
Historically, that's the way this place has worked. It's not satisfactory, but that's the way it's worked.
Okay. I want to raise another issue. Yesterday, I brought a story to the table that I saw when I was back home in Texas visiting family. It was in the Amarillo Globe News. Talked about how a number of Border Patrol stations around the state, Amarillo, Lubbock, San Angelo, Abilene, Dallas, San Antonio, were going to be closed. And I wondered if it wasn't another sort of passive-aggressive attempt by the Obama administration to not enforce the nation's immigration laws. Do you know anything more about this?
You know, I don't have the details, and obviously in preparation for this, I've asked my staff to let's look into that. When I had discussions with Immigration and Customs Enforcement years ago, back in the Bush administration, their number one lament was, you know, even after you get away from the border, once you get more into the interior of our state and of our country, then we get pretty thin. So the deactivation of these units does not sound like a good idea, and I just cannot believe, especially with a corridor. You've got I-35 running through the 26th district that I represent, Interstate 40 running east and west through the state. These are massive corridors that carry a lot of goods and traffic, but they also are corridors that are used by the people who exploit our border situation.
Well, I would recommend to you that article, and also the note that was attached to that article from a Border Patrol agent in charge in Amarillo. It was sent to other law enforcement officials saying, you know, look, there's no plan in place to replace what we do for you when it comes to enforcing immigration law.
Correct, and they are after the border, they are the next line of defense. And if you're worried about MS-13 and the drug cartels moving from the border areas deeper into our country, that's what these guys are there to protect us.
All right. Well, Congressman Michael Burgess, Republican from Texas, member of the Congressional Health Care Caucus, as the House picks up an effort to repeal Obamacare today. Thank you for joining us.
Sure enough. Thank